Okay, a week after going on the road, taking Pat's interference on the road to London, our third different country with this show. We are still on the road, granted, just down the road in Foxboro. Kyed, the People's Guest, is back with us, an old Boston Herald podcast because, to be frank, Boston Herald's had a lot of exclusive content from London back here, and it's been a weird week. So we need to, I don't know, like some normalcy to be restored here. I don't know if a win is coming on Sunday. Pats are going to play the Jets. We're going to do a very abbreviated version of the typical Friday, Thursday night preview episodes, really diving deep into the game because there's been a lot more off the field that's been a lot more interesting, I would say. And you and I have obviously talked. We were there at the game in London, but the word of the week is soft. And that's where I want to start. I ranted in my last episode. Give us the final word before we get on to what's happened this week and then the game on Sunday.
I just couldn't believe that Jerod Mayo walked it back on Monday. I think that was the thing that was the craziest to me, is that so many times now, Jerod Mayo says one thing one day, and the next day or the next week or a few weeks later, a few months later, retracts it, walks it back. And this was a time where it's just like, oh, okay. You told us that the team was soft, and then like the next day you've changed your mind and you're saying that the players are soft. And like another thing I will say about this is that from people that I've talked to in the locker room, like players in the locker room that I've talked to, on the record, off the record, whatever it was, they really don't seem that bothered by it. Like even Devon Godchaux, when he was talking to the media this week, was like, oh, he didn't really mean that. He meant that we were playing soft. So I think if anything, like maybe Jerod Mayo helped himself by retracting it. But players from around the league and retired players seem more bothered about this than the Patriots do. Like Max Crosby of the Raiders was asked by, he was like, whoa.
Well, Devin McCourty was like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. And Max Crosby was saying like, that's the worst thing you could say to a player. JJ Watt talked in the media this week saying like, can't believe he said that. That's the worst thing you can say. So either the Patriots players respect Jerod Mayo, understand what he's saying, believe him when they say that he meant that they're playing soft, or maybe their reaction to these comments speaks to what he's saying.
Confirms them.
Like, I don't know if I want to go that far, but and I guess we'll find out on Sunday against the Jets. I guess we'll find out as the season goes along. But like on one hand, you're saying like, oh yeah, it's a positive that they don't seem that bothered by it, but it's possible that that's actually a negative. And like you said, that they're kind of confirming what he's saying.
And to be clear, my stance is these guys are not soft. Like speaking with ex-players this week and inside the locker room, it's not that, physically or mentally you could get them out of any kind of circumstance very easily.
Right.
But in an NFL game, when you're down already going into week 8 and you're 1-6, like that does take a type of toughness that we don't frankly know if they'll have. And the way we'll find out is exactly what you said. Yeah. It's Sunday. I wrote this today. Like you don't need to upset the Jets to prove your toughness, but you do need to punch them in the face. Like people forget the Jets were the first team to really undress the Patriots in that Thursday night game. They go for 133 rushing yards. Every single opponent since then has rushed for more. Meanwhile, the Patriots are only getting 82. And whether that fits your definition of toughness, or we're just talking about the way that Jerod Mayo defined toughness, running the ball, stopping the run, covering kicks, like the Patriots are losing and they're losing badly. And that game against Jacksonville really summed that up. So I just want to steer clear of one thing, not to absolve like the media or anything of their role in this, which really just relaying what Jerod's saying and then walking back. Yeah. This is not some sort of freak out on the media's part, on fans' part. Soft is not something you hear a head coach of a football team call his own team, let alone one in New England, given the culture that Mayo grew up in as a player and as a coach. This is a big deal. The response, though, ultimately will be bigger.
And I will say one last thing about this, and that's that I don't believe that these players are soft because, so Bill Belichick obviously talked about this. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but obviously fans took Bill Belichick's comments of saying that he feels bad for players. He knows these players in the locker room aren't soft, the ones that he coached last year. And I'd say that one side of the fan base was saying like, hell yeah, go Bill, say these comments. Another half was saying like, okay, he's saying these, but at the same time not acknowledging that Juwan Bentley, Jabril Peppers, and Christian Barmore are not on this team, and that's part of the reason why the Patriots were so much better against the run than they have been this season. That's true, but Bill Belichick knows that the players that he coached last year are not soft, and him failing to acknowledge that those three guys are not playing doesn't change that. So I would say that like if Jerod Mayo thinks that the players are soft or that they're playing soft, I do think that it speaks to the coaching. And I think that maybe more blame needs to be placed on Mayo and his defensive coaching staff if he does believe that they're playing soft. And Mayo will say that like he'll put the blame on himself. He won't necessarily put the blame on his staff now at this point.
Right.
And I think that if this continues, could be an issue.
It is interesting too. And this is another small detour off of your detour to say that, and I went on about this Tuesday. It was Jerry Montgomery, Dante Hightower, Drew Wilkins are the only 3 new assistants on defense, coaching positions. And when you look at that front 7, that's the issue, is the stopping of the run. But the new D coordinator, DeMarcus Covington, coached defensive line the last 4 years. Before that was outside linebackers. Like, he still has his hands in whatever they're trying to cook up, and it's not good enough. So it is interesting, not only the new coaches element of this and whether or not they're doing their jobs to the best degree, which, look, you're in Dante Hightower's case, a young coach. In Wilkins and Montgomery's case, you're teaching slightly different techniques and introducing parts of the playbook that are new, and you just don't have great talent. But the bottom line is, it's interesting that Mayo will go to defend his staff more than the players. One more thing on Mayo. This is like detour after detour after detour. We're all lost. The GPS is broken. We're just going to have to get a flashlight and flag
it's like
someone down.
Some of the Ubers I was taking in London. Yeah. There's speed bumps. There's detours.
Look,
there's one-way streets. There are two-way streets.
This is me admitting, anyone who's ever commented that Callahan gets too winding and meandering, you're absolutely right. But just buckle up. Mayo yesterday, Wednesday, and we just talked about this because I just wrote about this. It'll be on the Boston Herald Friday morning. Gave the shortest press conference on a Wednesday all season. By transcript measurement, 1,000 fewer words than certain press conferences this year. Not only that, he was more disciplined and on point in his messaging, which, I'm sick about talking about Jerod Mayo's messaging. I want to get to the football, but this is the story this week. Any question about calling the team soft, he redirected to the Jets. Most answers were about, we're going to find out on Sunday. It's about preparing for the Jets. I think this was a wise move by him. And of course, we know in doing that, he's stealing from whom? Bill Belichick. We're on to the Jets. We'll see you on Sunday. I'm going to ignore the noise, which this time was actually courtesy of Belichick with his comments. And that's when they kind of cut the press conference short. But I think this is a good decision for Mayo, who is unprepared and too off the cuff when he speaks with us, which again, the extent of that damage is only measured as far as it goes into the locker room. This week, it went into the locker room, all of those soft comments. But how it comes out on Sunday, we'll still have to see. What else did you learn this week as we talked to him? Tons of different players. Coordinators were today. There's a real state of the team. I think it's fair to take the temperature because we're 7 games in. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I'd say I learned more from talking to, people within the team, sources about the team.
Yeah, you had a good piece today.
About what's kind of going wrong with the team. And overall, it really is everything. There's one aspect where, and I think this sometimes fails to get mentioned because things are worse than we expected them to. Mm-hmm. But this is a team that was not favored to win a single game entering the season. And that does not give them an excuse to lose by double digits to the Jaguars. But I feel like that does need to be acknowledged off the top that in May, when the schedule came out, when no one knew that Barmore was going to be out, when no one knew that Bentley and Andrews were going to be out, when no one knew that they were going to trade Matthew Judon, or that, Jabril Peppers was going to land on the commissioner's exempt list. This was a team that on paper was not favored to win a single game. So on paper, it makes sense that the Patriots are 1-6. That being said, though, it looks worse than we expected it to. Most teams, even if they're projected to go 0-17, still wind up winning 4 to 5 games or so. And the issues that I uncovered really were leadership overall, and that goes to players and coaches, talent overall on the team, and really just experience on the coaching staff. And I think that the leadership among players can be explained a lot by David Andrews being on injured reserve and by Juwan Bentley being on injured reserve. Those were really your top offensive leader and your top defensive leader, who are still around the team, but can't really carry the same weight that you did before. So now it's guys trying to figure out, do I step up? Do I not step up? Some of the leaders already in place maybe weren't the most vocal anyway. So I think that's a big deal. And then the other big deal is just the leadership on the coaching staff and the experience on the coaching staff, where there's no one on the defensive staff prior to this year who had even been a coordinator. Everyone on the defensive staff either wasn't coaching previously or had only risen to the level of being a position coach. On the offensive staff, it's a little bit different. Alex Van Pelt has offensive coordinator experience. He's called plays in one season.
Ben McAdoo.
You've got Ben McAdoo on the staff, who's been a head coach. He's been an offensive coordinator. He's been an offensive play caller. But on defense, really what this all comes down to, and this is now at this point my opinion on this, like the ownership needs to figure out if they are going to let the defensive staff figure it out on their own, gain experience on their own, if they're going to be patient enough, or if at this point they figure out, or after the season, we need to bring someone in. We need to bring in an assistant head coach. We need to bring in someone who's been either a head coach or a defensive coordinator, who's got more experience, who can help this staff out. Because I do think that there's a experience void on the defensive staff and really on the staff overall, where Jerod Mayo just doesn't know everything. He's a guy who was only a linebackers coach before. He was a de facto coordinator with Steve Belichick, but they had a guy above them in Bill Belichick who handled like every aspect of the organization.
Well, and to be clear, DeMarcus Covington is leading those meetings. Like they right. Still collaborate in the game plan. They sit around a round table. This is from the coaches themselves, to me and other reporters. And it's not like, hey, Jerry Montgomery's got third down, which you'll see more often in offense and other teams. And you're going to take red zone this week and you guys study early down and we'll all come together. And that's what the play sheet is. These little squares or rectangles with the different play calls that you contributed and you picked out and I assembled as the coordinator. DeMarcus Covington is at the head of that table. And I think when you look at the size of the defensive staff relative to the offensive staff, now granted, the offense has been like, you don't even want to say no great shakes, and injuries play a part on both sides
at least
of the
it's
defense.
Ascending in parts.
Right.
Yeah.
If Mayo is not heavily involved and he is not on defense, then it is Covington's show. And we've seen what that looks like. And again, Eric Johnson and Jaquelin Roy, I don't think they expected to be in the middle of their defense this year, but it is what it is. You have to make do. You need to make chicken salad, and they're not. The other thing, when we talk about the state of the team this week and leadership, Juwan Bentley, according to Bats Live, was the one who spoke at this team meeting we heard about today, where it was raised, hey, we need to play harder. We need to rehab harder. You need to get the bleep off of social media and focus on what's important, which, by the way, even if you haven't figured this out in week 8 of the NFL season, it's football. That's what's most important. And I thought Kendrick Bourne did a great job of vocalizing this and articulating it today to the media, saying, yeah, there's some immaturity in our room. Like Kayshon Boutte is the latest whiner to come out of the receivers room. And I ranted about this already. But like, you don't get to call for the ball demonstrably when you have 10 catches and 9 career healthy scratches. That's Kayshon Boutte, who's still calling for the ball and being demonstrative about it. So that team meeting, though, it's a good thing that Bentley spoke up because it fills that leadership void you're talking about. What does that say about a coaching staff that you have a player at the front of the room in week 8 saying we need to play better, we need to rehab harder, and we need to focus on what's important? The answer is nothing good.
No, absolutely not. And they're done. Like the wide receiver room needs to be figured out, because now we've got like Jalen Polk, who was saying last week that he's got the best hands in the NFL. You've got, Javon Baker can't find the field right now. He's been a healthy scratch most weeks.
Doesn't know the playbook according to his own offensive coordinator.
Right. Yeah. Doesn't know where to line up and what routes to run is what Van Pelt said. Like you mentioned, Kayshon Boutte saying, I have to go up to guys on the sideline and demand the ball. And like, I will say Kayshon Boutte probably should be targeted more than twice in the game, given how he's playing right now. But I don't know if that's necessarily something that you have to say to the media. I think that's something that, probably doesn't need to be said. And then, KJ Osborne was posting on social media after the game. Jalen Polk, like, it's just a huge issue right now in the wide receiver room.
It's just a lot of immaturity. And
I don't know if there's someone to corral that, because they've got Tyler Hughes as the wide receivers coach, who has never been a positional coach before. Taekwon Underwood has only been assistant wide receivers coach, I believe, at the college level before. They don't have that one big, like, vocal, intimidating veteran wide receiver on the team who can kind of pull the group together. So I mean, if it's Juwan Bentley, whoever it is who has to pull this group together, like something has to happen. And, you mentioned like Eric Johnson, Jaquelin Roy. That is the other aspect of this, is that there have been so many injuries. The roster was so devoid of talent that they've had to bring in so many new guys now since even the beginning of the season. And Keon White was saying this to me, where like, it's tough to trust that your teammates will be where you expect them to be, because you haven't been practicing with them since the beginning of the summer. And he views trust as being the biggest issue on the defense right now, and more so than installing new elements or coaching or leadership. And like, that's just something that can't really be fixed anywhere else but on the practice field.
And you see it on film.
Yeah.
Like when Jelani Tavai is flying in face first into a gap that clearly is not his, trying to get ahead and create a negative play because you just don't have the belief that the defensive line is going to create a wall and run parallel with an outside zone play. That's where you have the selfish play coming in. When Dietrich Wise is doing the same, just ripping around the edge and not caring about quarterback contain or setting the edge, fundamentally, that's an issue. Like Christian Ellis did not play particularly well. Like the worst 10-tackle game I've ever seen. It's not his fault. Right. He got here and didn't even go to defensive meetings last year. He was a core special teamer, and that was it. He's not a take-on linebacker, which speaks to the depth and the injuries they've had. But that trust is why guys are jumping out of gaps. Okay.
One thing I will say about the linebackers, like, and yeah, it's not Christian Ellis's fault that he's like 230 pounds. It's not Raekwon McMillan's fault.
238, but yes.
That he's like 240 or whatever it is. And like, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what the Patriots defense does. I don't know if they're built for the two gapping scheme now at this point, because they don't have 350-pound defensive tackles. They've got a bunch of 300-pounders. They don't have 260-pound linebackers. They've got a bunch of smaller guys. Like you could honestly make the case that the people in this building who are best suited to be those like run stuffing linebackers are on the coaching staff, and Jerod Mayo and Dante Hightower. Like, and obviously Jelani Tavai is a bigger guy too, but like once you lose Juwan Bentley, no one else is really on this roster who can fill that middle linebacker role.
Yeah.
Other than Mayo and Hightower.
I just love the idea of a guy who we've not heard anything about or from the last, 6 weeks. Joshua Uche, if they make this pivot to like a 4-down, pin your ears back scheme, which would be a wholesale change. I don't think it's going to happen. His thought process has to be that single gif of Michael Scott at the table, slamming his palm down. Thank you. Because that's what Josh Uche needs to do in order to be effective, speaking of another guy who's probably playing outside the scheme. Okay, so you have a team meeting today. The receivers are still whining everywhere, with the exception of Kendrick Bourne, which is not to shout out someone who's been on this show a couple of times before, but I think had the most mature comment saying, hey, it is immaturity. New guys coming up in NIL. I don't totally buy that theory, but you need to bring them along, teach them how to be a professional, and deal with money and fame and family coming out of the corners of your life to say, hey, I want a piece of this and a piece of that. And then also just do your job at the end of the day. I don't think we missed anything as far as comments because, look, there's been so much, but we've already been going for almost 20 minutes. Did we?
Yeah, no, I don't think we missed anything. It's been like, it started off on Wednesdays, just a weird week. And like, I think things have kind of like the tension is lessened a little bit, but still, very eventful week here in New England.
I will say too, Devon Gotchow spoke this week, and he's a guy who, ironically enough, I think might have fit the Daniel Ekuwale description of guys in here think too highly of themselves, because he was very often speaking with us and speaking from a leadership position. I think Devon Gotchow is a good player. Did not show up whatsoever against the Jaguars. In fact, was a liability. Stood up by a tight end in the last touchdown run. Didn't really speak after the game as far as I saw. Maybe I missed something. And then this week is like, oh, well, Jerod didn't mention it. I think that's fine. Yeah. It's like, well, either take it as a challenge and man up or not. And Daniel Ekuwale is going to hit his career high in snaps on the 21st play that he sees on Sunday, which is insane. It speaks to a lot of things going on, where there's miscommunications, guys next to each other, not performing to certain levels, and just they don't have anyone else to play. As their position coach, Jerry Montgomery put the summer going, yeah, I guess Ekuwale is going to have to replace Barmore. We don't have anybody else.
No.
Okay. So then the question is, before we get into the Jets, how do you pull yourself out of this? Because guys have already made the obvious point today that winning is the greatest deodorant possible. And you're 7-point underdogs at home to the Jets for the first time since, I think, Mike Giardi tweeted today, like 1972. And Mike was at that game, by the way, covering it. Do you expect it to happen this weekend? Is it a slow process? Is it a big win? Like, when does this happen? What does it look like?
I think they need to start playing better for them to pull out of this. I'm just not really convinced that it's going to happen. I think if anything, if they do keep losing, there has to be like actual consequences. I don't know if that's a player getting cut. I don't know if that's a key player getting benched. I think that you have to potentially make your team worse in order to make your team better. And if there are guys who are being huge problems in the locker room, or, missing meetings, or being late, or not taking accountability, then I think that you need to create some consequences for these guys to show that, like, okay, we've had the meeting. We've had the come to Jesus moments. Like, we're trying to bring you guys up. If you're not getting it, then you're out of here. Because I don't know if it's going to be fixed on the football field because I just don't know if this team is talented enough to do it.
I think there's just an element to speak to what I again wrote today of just you need to bring the fight to the other team.
Yeah.
Like you did this in the first quarter and then kind of laid down in a way that was just unacceptable. Now, part of that time change, guys going out, whatever, that obviously has to stop. I think you need to bring a physicality and an attitude that just says F you. Like it's got to be a little saltier than this. The energy at least has to be going, not just inward and sitting on it. You've got to throw it at the Jets on Sunday. So whether they win or lose, if there is a persistence, a grit, a competitive courage that you see, to me, that is the first step. Like, regardless of the circumstances, we are here. We're going to do our best to kick your ass. You'll probably do that to us, but we're going to show up because that's our job. I think ultimately it does start, as you're saying, kind of behind the scenes, getting their house in order, if you will. But I don't think it will be this weekend either. I'm looking at the Titans game. They just trade DeAndre Hopkins. They've got a bad quarterback. Yeah, they'll be at home. They know what they are. I'd say they're in worse shape knowing they're already selling pieces off and it's not even Halloween. That's a game that I look at and go, maybe you win. And even if you don't, you go to overtime. If you build on this performance, because there's no way you cannot build off of last Sunday. Last Sunday was a disaster. Again, that's what I think this looks like. It's a progression over a couple of weekends.
Yeah, and I think they need to be more competitive. And I think, like, in some ways, this might sound crazy to say, but it might wind up being the best thing for this team that the Jaguars really did just run over them like they did in that game. Because after the game against the Texans, you were still kind of hearing excuses from the coaches of like, oh, if you take out 3 big plays, then it really was. I don't know if this was there, like I'm paraphrasing, but essentially.
No, that's exactly what he said.
If you took out 3 big plays, then it wasn't so bad in the run defense. And it's like, okay, but those big plays were for like 50 yards and 20 yards and they were touchdowns. So like, I think if anything,
if you take out 3 kicks in Patriots history, you have half of the number of Super Bowls. How about that?
And I think they had almost like fooled themselves into thinking like, oh, it's not that bad. The run defense isn't that bad. We just were allowing big plays. It's like, all right, well, on Sunday in London, you saw just how bad the run defense is. So that really is a wake-up call, I think, for this defense. That's why Jerod Mayo came out saying how soft they were and everything like that. And now we see how they respond to it, because I think they had lulled themselves into like some sort of, I don't know, complacency or whatever it was, that like it wasn't as bad as it was. And it really obviously was.
Okay. Enough about that. We need to cleanse the timeline, as the kids say. Cleanse the podcast, cleanse the feed, cleanse the YouTube. Drake May, let's do 4 or 5 minutes on this kid. Because I thought it was a little bit of a step back from Jacksonville. Now, granted, within the context of it's his first start and a rookie curve, I gave him an A- against Houston. Like I had baked in an expectation. He'll throw a dumb pick, 11 nerves. After that was absolute nails, great throws. People disagree with me. Like pick your Dan Orlovsky imitator, JT O'Sullivan or Chase Daniel. They're all being like, wow, he took a step forward. They probably know better than I do. The point is, if you're scoring a B+ or an A- this early, his GPA is still in the mid-3s. Yeah. This is a great start. Alex Van Pelt today said he's very happy with him. His development is right where it needs to be, from the footwork, the playmaking, the off-platform throws, the tight window throws. It's all there. Mm-hmm. I know a bad game is coming, but it's hard to say, even looking against this Jets defense and the offensive line. For the Patriots might be subtle, by the way. We could see Vidarian Loback, that I expect it to be anytime soon. Like he's checking all of the boxes, basic and things that are a little bit more advanced or would normally catch a rookie making a second or third start off guard.
Yeah, and I think the fast start in the game against the Jaguars was big. Yeah. Drake May has really kind of leaned on that since that game, that he's very proud that they were able to get off to that fast start. Obviously now in the future, it's about sustaining that fast start. So I think that was obviously a big positive. Guys like Dan Orlovsky and Chase Daniel, like you were saying, have mentioned his footwork and his fundamentals and all those type of things as being a big improvement from his first start. So I think that overall is a positive as well. And when you look at the stat line and you see they didn't turn the ball over, you're probably saying to yourself, well, obviously it was a huge jump forward for Drake May in this game. He
no picks,
3 touchdowns and had no picks. But it's like, okay, well, in all reality, he got lucky that KJ Osborne broke up an interception. He had another throw behind Austin Hooper that should have been picked off. Overall, PFF charted him with 3 turnover-worthy plays in this game. So that's where you see, like, maybe like you were saying, some of the regression, but like those were actual turnovers in the first week. So I still don't look at it as like this major regression that those things happen. I just think that it might not have been as positive as it might have looked on paper, where you're saying like, all right, yeah, 3 touchdowns, 270 yards, no interceptions, no fumbles. perfect performance. It wasn't necessarily that great, but I do look at it still as being a step forward for him. And overall, in these first 2 weeks that he's playing far above my expectations for him. So I don't know. I mean, I personally, I just picked him up in fantasy because I'm like, wow, he's going to get 25 points each week. Then like, might as well have him on my team. But obviously that is an aside or whatever. But I do. That shows that I do think that he can keep this going. Maybe not necessarily against the Jets this week because they do have a tough defense. We'll find where he even has spots to throw the ball. But overall, I think he's going to have a strong rookie season.
Another little detour. Coming up at the end of this episode, a 4-minute drill with Joe Milton, who does a great Drake May impression. And I informed Drake in the locker room after Joe and I had shot this quick little video outside in the concourse. He was like, what do you say? So then I had to do an impression of Joe Milton's impression of Drake May. He was pleasantly surprised. And then we talked a little bit about how much cover 2 Jacksonville was playing. And it's like, man, there are so many different ways they got to that and yada, yada, yada. But he didn't have a problem with it. And that was honestly part of the reason I was impressed, because you have safeties in different places. And, you know, even when he's making play action throws and he's like, okay, that's cool. You're going to change the picture. Like I see what it is now and I see it very quickly. So just more advanced stuff. And not to mention, they've seen this style of defense that they will see from the Jets. Now, this will be their 4th time in 8 games coming up, having played the Jets, the Niners, and then Houston, who all came from this tree out in San Francisco with Robert Saleh, who's obviously now gone, D'Amico Ryans, and now the Jets again. So that's that. Anything else we missed about Drake?
I don't think so. No.
I would say, small side, again, his PR and media messaging and his consistency with who he is incredibly impressive for a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
And if he was making comments that he had to walk back, you'd be like, oh, this is fine. And I wrote 6 months ago, Jerod Mayo is going to make rookie mistakes and they're going to coincide with the Patriots. They've just not improved there. Drake May has been very, very good. I think thoughtful and authentic as much as you should be with the media, frankly.
Yeah, taking blame for mistakes. He took a blame for a sack. He said they walked up to Michael Wenham and said they kind of scrambled into a sack on the play. He's taken blame and responsibility for things that probably aren't necessarily his fault, but that's all the things that we heard that the Patriots liked about him before they drafted him, that he was not going to be throwing his teammates under the bus, and he was going to be taking responsibility for the issues they had.
I asked Mike Owen about that too. I was like, so what should you have done differently? Or he have done differently? He was like, nothing, that was on me. So you have guys who were jumping on the grenade that Drake's already jumped on for them, being like, oh, I should have blocked better. That's my perspective. And it's also good to hear from Michael Wino, who has really not lived up to that contract so far this year. But speaking of Drake,
it was a little bit better, I felt like, on Sunday.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I gave him the sack, but it was one of those I asked. I was like, so I did this. What do you think? And he was like, yeah, that's fair. Drake May, we know, also considers himself to be a knockoff version of Jason Tatum. Was at the Celtics games last year, as you and I both were, having a freaking blast, even as like a non-basketball person. Fair to say.
Absolutely.
Okay. If you would like to have a blast at Celtics games this season, they just tipped off and beat the Knicks, I think, by 49 and hit a bazillion threes. You should go to Game Time, because right now Game Time has the lowest price ticket guarantee anywhere you want to find tickets to the NBA, NFL, shows, concerts. It's all there. And if you find a lower price elsewhere, they credit you 110% of the difference, all at Game Time. Not to mention, it's all in pricing. It's right up front. No fees, no taxes, no this, no that. Everything is right there with Game Time picks. Only incredible deals, all in pricing and your seat view. If you want to see what it's like, I'll put section 309, row 13, see whatever. You can do that at the Garden or elsewhere. So go to Game Time right now, download the Game Time app, and create an account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account at Game Time, redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Game Time has been a long-time supporter of this podcast, as well as Prize Picks, who I have done no favors by handing out loser after loser, but we are going to turn this around, as well as the Patriots. And in the meantime, if you have been playing, you have been doing better than me, because Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season, and maybe even with basketball too. Because here's the deal with Prize Picks. This is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, and all you have to do is pick more or less. That's it. Build a lineup of players. They'll give you a number. If you think Drake May is going to throw for more yards, or Jason Tatum's going to score more points, or Brad Marchand's going to have more, whatever, you can do that. Build your lineup, pick more or less 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can win up to 100 times your money. That's right, at Prize Picks. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win at all with any lineup, with injury insurance, by the way. To get the $50 bonus, it's guaranteed. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay, prize pick picks of the week. You co-signed on these, by the way. So if they're losers, one for him, one for me. Drake May.
Save yourself.
Yes, I have been out here. The lifeguard is off duty, and I am about to sink soon. Drake May more than 0.5 touchdown passes. If you think Drake May is going to throw a touchdown pass against the Jets on Sunday, boom, lock it in with the prize picks lineup. How about this one too? Breece Hall more than 0.5 touchdown rushes. Breece Hall scored last time against the Patriots on the ground. Tank Bigsby, I think, is still in the end zone celebrating against the Patriots out over in London. Teams close to the goal line know they can punch it in. I don't know about the yardage. I think the Patriots' run defense will be better, as DeMarcus Covington promised today. But Breece Hall ultimately gets in the end zone, whether this game is close or not. So Drake May more than 0.5 touchdown passes. Breece Hall more than 0.5 touchdown rushes on Sunday at Gillette. Okay, the Jets. They're 2-5. They stink. Not as bad as the Patriots, but they are 25th by DVOA. They're 21st in offense, 21st in defense, and 28th on special teams. Here are their last four. They lost 37-15 versus Pittsburgh last weekend. Not as bad, but another loss, 23-20 the Monday before to the Bills at home. Before that, they lost 23-17 versus Minnesota in London. And after beating the Patriots, they lost at home to the Broncos 10-9 in the rain. A major reason for that, Aaron Rodgers, shockingly, at age 40, is playing like he's 40, completing 61% of his passes, just over 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 picks, and not enough joy for Aaron Rodgers. Too much anger out there on the field. I said a bunch of stuff about the Jets. What's your big picture first thought that comes to mind when you think about them as a football team right
now? First of all, it's that Aaron Rodgers looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers in one game this season that was against the Patriots. Yes. So not necessarily sure if we're going to see the 40-year-old version of Aaron Rodgers or like the 28-year-old version this week at Gillette Stadium.
The Steve Carell version, 40-year-old.
Yes. But the other thought is that this is not your typical 2-5 team coming to Gillette Stadium. This is still a very talented Jets roster that just acquired Devontae Adams. And I mean, think what you want if the Patriots get decimated by the Jets, but like, this is still a very talented roster that is playing below expectations, unlike a Patriots roster, which is not very talented and playing below expectations. So this is still a pretty big mismatch on Sunday.
Yeah, and I said they're 25th by DVOA, which is true. The Patriots are down. I think it's 30th. The gap between them, not between rankings, but in the percentage, which obviously you want to be higher. The Jets are just above minus 20% by DVOA, which if you want to explain it, just go to the website, FDN Fantasy, or we'll have Aaron Schatz on here. Maybe we'll hand out some free subscriptions. The Patriots are minus 40. So the Patriots are twice as bad as the Jets by DVOA, despite only being separated by 5 or 6 spots. That speaks to the talent. It speaks to how closely they've lost these games. They obviously are desperate at 2-5, but there is still just some dysfunction in here where you just go, there's something missing, and it's still a team that can be beatable. Now, would I bank on the Patriots doing that when Ramondre Stevenson missed practice this week? And he was back today. That's a good sign. Vidarian Lowe's banged up. No. But this is a way where if you are more desperate and you are at home and you can start fast again, I do think there is a path to victory here for the Patriots. That being said, there's a lot of mismatches that they have to address. Yeah. And Quinnen Williams is one of those players that is down as he's been this year. I just go, when it's him against Ben Brown, it's a horrible starting point. Like, or against Michael Jordan or against City So, who were terrible against the Jaguars and are probably starting again on Sunday.
We'll see about that. Wouldn't be shocked if Michael Wenner was back at guard this week.
Oh, that's true.
But we'll see. We'll see on the health of Vidarian Lowe. But absolutely, that's a mismatch of Quinnen Williams versus Ben Brown, especially if it's also against Michael Jordan. I think that obviously Michael Wenner should be able to hold up better against Quinnen Williams, given the contract that he was given. But yeah, I mean, Alex Van Pelt said today, Patriots pass protection has been better. I asked him how much Drake May's style of play can help drag down the pressure rate. He didn't lend a lot of credence to that idea, but
I think they're like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, first of all, he said, what do you mean by that? And I had to kind of clarify that obviously the defense has to focus on Drake May's athleticism, it's better downfield passing, some of those other things. Right. And he was basically said, like, yeah, I mean, if he can scramble out of the pocket, then that can, cause the defense not get a pressure, but that's not really necessarily what I was getting after. But either the Patriots pass protection has been better over the last 2 weeks, or Drake May is helping it one way or the other. It's not as much of a disaster as it's been early in the season. And Ben Brown has certainly been helpful in that, better than Nick Leverett.
Their best offensive lineman, I think, the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think potentially moving Michael Wenu back to guard full-time could help. It still creates some issues at tackle, but overall, I mean, yeah, it's still an issue, but it doesn't seem like it's as big of an issue as it was early in the season.
Yeah. All right. Let's stick with the matchups. We usually do 3 matchups, 2 keys, 1 wild card thought, and then do some game picks. We'll just get into it again. People want something other than a breakdown between a 2-5 team versus the 1-6 team. But here we are. So Quinton Williams, whether he's on the interior versus Michael Jordan or Ben Brown or Mike Onwenu, who's a good point. He'll be back at right guard if Vidarian Lowe is at left tackle, because that means DeMontre Jacobs, who I thought played better than people gave him credit for against Jacksonville, would flip back to the right side in this constant windshield wiper action from him going on one side to the other with the Patriots offensive line. What else are you looking for as far as matchups where this is a battleground that could kind of swing the war that will be Sunday?
I mean, the big one is the Jets wide receivers against the Patriots cornerbacks, because last time I checked, the Patriots only have one Christian Gonzalez. They've not cloned him yet. And the Jets have 2, arguably 3 wide receivers that you might want to stick Christian Gonzalez on in Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, and Alan Lazard. Not necessarily the most talented of those guys, but someone that Aaron Rodgers obviously trusts quite a bit. Had a big game against the Patriots early this season and is still getting a lot of targets in the Jets offense. And it's just, I've been mentioning it all season, but like the height of the Patriots cornerbacks comes into play here, where Marcus Jones is still 5'8". He has not grown since the season began, and you don't necessarily want to put him out there against Alan Lazard. Patriots try to put Alex Austin out there against Alan Lazard in week 3. He wound up getting torched as well, and now he's on injured reserve, and you just don't have a lot of great options there. So I've kind of thought about the idea of Marte Mapu playing a little bit more in the slot. I don't know if
I think it's going to be a lot of zone.
Ultimately probably a lot of zone. But I'm curious. I asked Marcus Covington early in the season, like, would you put Marte Mapu in the slot against a bigger slot receiver? He didn't seem super open to the idea, but if you were going to do it, putting him out there against Alan Lazard might not be the worst idea.
Yeah, again, this is a ship where you plug one hole over here and another springs over there. Like, you could, again, that one plug obviously is Christian Gonzalez, and you could double one receiver over there. But Alan Lazard, we talked about this before the first Jets game, was a walking mismatch just because of his size. Lo and behold, the first touchdown of the game is him dragging. It was Alex Austin,
grabbing his undershirt.
All the way into the end zone. And so Patriots will have problems. I think they'll play a lot more zone behind that. The problem is then, this is a team that has not been able to generate any kind of pressure on quarterbacks with down 4 linemen. And
they have Giant Divide dropping back in zone, which creates a giant hole in the middle of the defense.
Right. And so I'll bring up a guy I already brought up earlier, because I think, we've talked about Keon White at length. He's been very hit or miss. Dietrich Wise is who he is. Joshua Uche is just not seeing the field anymore. Daniel Akwale, they need some unlikely source of pass rush in this to affect Aaron Rodgers, because as someone put this week or last week, he's the head of the snake. We can look in the back end and all the different coverage elements that they're going to have to address and probably spin the dial. You need to get pressure on Aaron Rodgers, because this is a guy who's banged up. His mobility is limited. You did not pressure him last time, and he's probably going to figure out what you're in. But that won't matter if you get interior pressure on him, and that falls to guys like Ekwale, and they can kick Keon White inside. But, Keon White, of all the players in their defensive line, will draw extra attention. So that's a guy, as tired as he is, again, going to hit his career high in snaps on Sunday after 21 plays. You just need a little more rush from him, a little more oomph. So he's someone that I'm looking for. All right, 2 keys to victory. I'm going to go with mine. This is simple. I think they have to score on defense or special teams to win on Sunday.
I think that's probably very true. And they have not been doing a good job at, getting turnovers, like scoring on defense, scoring. I think that those are the things, obviously, that Bill Belichick's teams over the years did a very good job of doing. And we just haven't really seen that much so far from the Patriots this season. So that's definitely a big one. I think someone in that receiving core is going to have to spring loose for a big game. And it's tough to figure out who that's going to be, because the Jets.
What does that mean, though? Like, is it 100 yards?
80 to 100. Yeah. And I don't know if it's going to be Demario Douglas, because he was sick last week. And like I said, Jets have good cornerback play. DJ Reed's going to be back in this game, I believe. Obviously, they've still got Sauce Gardner. So those
Hassan Reddick, by the way, is going to finally play some football in the year 2024.
So, I mean, I think it probably, like, in all reality, it probably is going to have to be Demario Douglas because those two outside cornerbacks are very good. I know Kayshon Boutte's going to be out there on the sideline demanding the ball, but, like, if he's out there at X wide receiver and Sauce Gardner is covering him, I don't think you necessarily want to take that chance against Kayshon Boutte. I know he beat, what's his name, Stingley for a touchdown. So it's possible that he can beat one of those first round type cornerbacks for touchdowns. But I do think it's probably gonna have to be a really big game for Demario Douglas. I think he's gonna have to spring loose. Yeah. For 100 yards, like for them to win the game. Yes. 100 yards, like his first career 100-yard performance.
Demario Douglas had 92 against the Texans a couple of weeks ago. That was the most since Christmas Eve 2022. So yeah, it will take some minor history here for the Patriots to win a home game against the Jets, who again, they're vulnerable. They have weaknesses. They are not all together. They are less than the sum of their parts right now. And I think Devontae Adams will be more on the same page with Rodgers. But, you know, it's going to take some good bounces. And maybe it is a broken tackle for Demario Douglas or someone else to get free and get those easy yards that right now are just not coming for anyone else, by the way, because Patriots have two of the worst 6 receivers against man-to-man coverage in the entire league, according to the PFF. Yeah. And that's KJ Osborne and Jalen Polk, who Polk right now with a concussion has not practiced either day. Doesn't look like he's
probably won't be playing. So it's probably going to be Douglas, Boutte, which is Osborne.
Probably an upgrade considering his performance the last 3-4 weeks.
Bourne. I mean, the Patriots also can't win if they're going to be averaging like 2 yards per carry. So that's another big one too, is that they absolutely have to run the ball better. And I don't know. I mean, I think having Ramondre Stevenson back, more healthy, will help. I also think Stevenson and Antonio Gibson were just so hesitant on that Wembley Stadium field. You know, and Tank Bigsby wasn't, so that was their issue doing that. But I do think playing on Gillette Stadium might help a little bit there.
All right, a wild card thought.
I'll let you go first.
Okay, I know if you listened carefully, I did not buy you any time for your key to this game, and so I went quickly, and then you stammered and agreed and took some time, which I am now buying some time for you to think. So take it as I call ourselves out for the earlier part of this show. My wild card thought is I'm very curious what this crowd looks like on Sunday, because it's a short distance, obviously, for Jets fans to come up if they want to see their team, and especially if they want to see their team win, which, as we know, they have not done very often this season. They beat the Patriots, they beat the Titans, and that's been it. So I'm curious in a way that we saw a lot of Fenway Park this year, to be frank, until about late June. You had Philly fans, you had Yankee fans coming up, and consisting of at least 30, 40, maybe 50% of those crowds, which sucked, by the way, because I've sat those games, got my tickets at game time. And it not only was just not enjoyable, but especially when the other team scores, that's all you hear. It's like you had been somewhere else. So I'm curious about the percentage of Jets fans. I'm curious what the first quarter looks like, because you had Boo Birds the last time they played here after the Patriots called 2 runs and did not put the ball in Jerod Mayo's hands in his first start on the first or second play. I don't think those Boo Birds are going to wait even that long if you have a run stuff on the first play. So this crowd, I think, will be the best temperature we could take of Patriots fans in a while, because everyone's excited for Jerod Mayo. And that excitement's still there. But around the team, I don't know why else anyone would go to this game on Sunday, other than it's going to happen.
I'd say my wild card thought is that
is that enough time?
Yes, I think it was. My wild card thought is that Patriots offense needs to be a little bit less predictable in their play calling. I know that it wasn't necessarily like there was just so many first down runs against the Jaguars, and there was like they started off fast without doing that, and like for Jerod Mayo, 100%, he has been very accountable. He's been taking responsibility. He did say after the game that, like, you know, they were kind of put in tough situations on 2nd and 3rd and long where, you know, it wasn't necessarily the most advantageous situations. And I think a lot of that was running early when they weren't able to run the ball. So I think my wildcard thought is simply that I'd like to see a little bit less predictable play calling. I don't want to see them call first down runs 4 times in a row or whatever it was last time against the Jaguars. Switch things up a little bit more and just simply rely on Jerod Mayo. Like, Jerod Mayo has been the only positive about the Patriots.
Would you put him in the run game? We still haven't seen that yet. Zone reads, power reads, some QB runs. Like,
I don't know. I don't know if it's worth the risk. Like, maybe
that sound that you just made, I think, was Jerod Mayo from the future after getting hit by CJ Mosley.
He's always
on one of those plays I just cited. That was very much like trying to get up
he's already scrambling enough.
Yeah.
I know that it could help improve the run game, but I also think the run game was good enough early in the season that you can figure it out without having to do that.
What about 4 times? Did you call 4 plays, including options?
I mean, I think it starts with like 1. Are you willing to call 1? I would not call 4 options in this game.
Okay.
But I would prefer to see Drake May throw the ball 50 times than call 4 run plays for him.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's an element of how do you protect yourself, right? And does that come on the 40th drop back or how much you risk? Which this is getting into like very into the weeds here, but I get the point you're making because you're guaranteeing some sort of tackle generally if you are calling those runs versus
he's been pretty good at protecting himself on the run though. I will say,
yeah,
like sliding, getting down, getting what he can and then giving up on the play. It's not a similar situation like Jaden Daniels from last year, who's just getting like blown up on plays. May has done a good job at doing that.
All right, game pick.
I am picking the Jets to win this game. God, I would go 24-14.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Patriots can generate some offense, but the Jets defense is tough enough where I don't know if we see 3 touchdowns from Drake May again in this game. I think it's still a pretty solid performance from him. I just can't go so far as to say that they're going to do it again and score 3 touchdowns against a defense as good as the Jets. And I do think the Patriots defense will continue to struggle, but once again, maybe not to the same degree that they did against the Jaguars.
Yeah, it's tough because as I said at the top, baked into this game is what is the Patriots' level of buy-in for Jerod Mayo? What is their toughness? Like that's the measuring stick of what this game is going to be. And I think you will see that for most of the first half. Hell, the Patriots might have a lead at halftime in this game. But ultimately, as I say many times, the talent is the talent. And that gap is so wide right now between these two teams. I don't expect the Patriots to play either the luckiest or the closest to perfect game that they've had all season. Like they've actively regressed. That's the big issue with this team. And that's why it's on coaching is that they've just regressed from weeks 1 and weeks 2. I think this ends up the Jets pulling away 27-13 in a way that weirdly, even for a team that covers by almost double, fans feel better about because maybe it's, 14-13, 17-13 going into the fourth quarter. And you just had, a drop here or a strip sack there, and the Jets get an easy one. But I think the Patriots need one of those to win. And it's too hard to see right now.
It really just ultimately can't be like a 34-0 game.
Yes.
That's the one thing that they absolutely have to avoid because I don't know what this looks like a week from now if that happens. And we haven't seen one of those games yet, really.
We saw a few last year.
Sure did.
We know what happened to the head coach then, which is, to be clear, not what is going to happen to Jerod Mayo after the season, no matter what has been said or reported or alluded to elsewhere. Would be absolutely shocked.
Yeah, 100%. I would be completely shocked too.
Yeah. It's crazy. Silly talk. Okay. No silly talk here. Only serious football analysis. He's Doug Kyed. I'm Andrew Callahan. Of course, we're both from the Boston Herald. If you have not yet, get your ticket to Game Time. Put your lineups in at Prize Picks. If you got a second, 5-star review always helps us grow. It would be more than appreciated if you could take a second and even drop a review or shoot us an email, acallahan@bostonherald.com or dkyed@bostonherald.com. Enjoy the game on Sunday as best as you can. College football slates on Saturday.
I haven't even looked at it really.
Yeah. I was looking forward to Penn State, Wisconsin. It's going to be in Wisconsin. And there's stuff at Penn State that we're not going to talk about right now that has me a little less excited to talk about that. Anyway, I will be back. Film Mondays will be back in my office. No more road shows here. And then we continue the Patriots play at the Titans next week. So more football to come. Lots of stakes on Sunday. Enjoy the games. All right, back here with another 4-minute drill. The only rule, you can't run out the clock on a 4-minute drill. The Joe Milton certainly done that over his career. First-time guest in Pat's Interference. You know the deal. We've talked about it. I think I have more questions for you than any guest so far. So we're going to try to go rapid fire here. You ready?
Here we go.
Okay, starting the clock. Number 1, if Joe Milton wasn't famous for being a quarterback and his arm strength for having a quarterback, what talent would you be most famous for?
Playing the drums.
Really?
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
I feel like what I can do with drumsticks and what I learned over my life and growing up, and also Drumline's my favorite movie. So I feel like handling the drumsticks. I actually was playing the drums yesterday, so handling the drumsticks very well and being able to just come up with beats.
So I have about 4 minutes worth of questions off of that, but we got to keep this moving. Next one. So you came from an offense where I know you told me it was one word and go. That was the whole play call.
Yeah.
You're up to 16, 17 now. How did you go from one word to 17? What were you studying like over the summer at home?
Just hearing it out my helmet. My girlfriend, Destiny, she did a lot from just calling out a walkie-talkie. I bought some walkie-talkies off Amazon, and they had some earpieces. So that's pretty much what we did. And then when we went to Fort Lauderdale with the receivers, I had Pop, he called them out, and I just called out the routes. And then we kind of just lined up in the living room and kind of just snapped the ball. So.
Was that before or after you busted his hand? Because he spilled those beans on this podcast earlier this year.
I did see that video. He did spill those beans. That was before. That was like when we first got down there.
All right, let's go back to Knoxville. Give us a big man on campus moment, whether it was a perk or a party that you just looked around and said, okay, it's good to be Joe Milton right now.
Man, big man on campus moment. Sheesh, man, a lot of things running through my head right now.
You don't have to hide any of them. You can just zoom in with one good time. Could have been after a win, middle of the week, whatever it was. Big man on campus moment.
I'll say after. Sheesh, I'm gonna say after Vanderbilt game when I crowned myself after the touchdown. Everybody just started chanting Joe. So that was pretty. Yeah, it was like more of a King Joe, and that was pretty lit. So yeah.
All right, back to the play calls. Spit out right now, either from your Michigan days or if you feel comfortable enough, the offense you're in right now, just a long play call for us.
Oof. Okay, let's go Michigan days. Let's go X right 2, twin right. We got Q8, max bomb, lunge left. Yeah.
Of course, and I don't know this for a fact, he called a deep pass play because he's Joe Milton. It was a bomb, deep left. All right. Before you had your current girlfriend, how did Joe Milton break the news that he was breaking up with someone?
Just stopped talking to him.
You ghosted?
I ghosted. I'm not going to lie because the camera right here ghosted for sure.
Yeah, you and Ramondre too, disgraceful. Yeah. Can you do a Drake May impression?
A Drake May impression. All right, let's see. We gotta go, bro. Come on, man. Like, gotta go. Like, we just gotta go. But it's okay. That's me, Cole. That's me.
All right. When does he say that? That was awesome.
Usually be in practice, like on like the Wednesday practice. Like if it's like a go ball that was supposed to be thrown and somebody run a hitch, just because they seen it a little bit different. We'll come back. He'll come back after his reps is over, and he'll be like, man, we got to go, man. We got to go. You got to run the go ball, man. I'm trying to throw you the go ball.
Okay, speaking of got to go, we got 15 seconds. I got 2 questions for you. I can't wait to face this defense or player in my NFL career. Who is that, or what is that defense?
Anybody. I just want to show why I'm the best and why I think I'm the best.
Okay. Normally we end with what's your least favorite media question? You've been very smiley so far. What's one question you would like us to ask next time we have a big scrum, we got more cameras?
What else do I like to do other than throwing the ball deep? I always just thought about, like, media, obviously my arm is, very impressive. I was blessed with that talent, but just more about, other things that I do at the quarterback position.
All right, there it is. Next time we talk to Joe Milton, we might be talking about that and definitely a lot of the drums, and maybe we'll get another impression out of him. That's Joe Milton for Pats Interference Podcast. We'll see you next time.